Hi, what's up? Hello. My name is Liz, and you're watching For Booking Out Loud. So today, as promised, I am going to go over my 2020 reading stats and a survey. And I'm getting a lot of these questions from a blog that I found, and I'll link it below. However, those questions add up to 30. And first of all, I don't have time to answer 30 questions, and I don't think you want to watch a 30+ minute video. So I'm going to be selective of the questions, and I will also I will also write down in the description which questions I answered. And hopefully we will have a good time. Like I said in my last video, I have been struggling with kind of summarizing my reading year, and I decided to first put out a video of my top 20 books of 2020 and rank them, and I will link that again above and below. And this video is just, what else did I read? So let's start with Goodreads. Just going through all the stats. Excuse me one second. I read 93,157 pages last year, which is from 246 books. It has definitely been my best reading year ever, and I don't know if I'll ever top it, point blank. The shortest book I read was The Runaway Bride, which was actually one of the first books I read last year, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just a really quick ebook. And then the longest book I read was War and Peace. I'm just going to give you advice right now. Do not try to read that book through audio. You'll forget all of it. You'll just really hate your life. Like I did. Still my longest book read, I guess. I really thought it was going to be It, or not It, The Stand is longer than it, but apparently not. And then my average book length was 378 pages. I don't have anything to say about this. It makes sense, I guess. My most popular book that I rated and read last year is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Highly recommend. Love the book. And then the least popular book I read was Hiking from Home. And this was during my phase of watching long distance hiking videos, and honestly, I still want to hike a long distance trail, but maybe not anytime soon. But that was a book within that phase. And then my average rating for books was 3.5, so a little above average for most books, which also makes sense. My highest rated was The Deathly Hallows. I did a reread at the very beginning of the year of all 7 books, and therefore highest rated. And then my first review of the year was Different Seasons by Stephen King. And really, I did this review because I wanted to make sure I remembered which short story in this novel I liked and which one I didn't. And I've tried to do that since then, but it's kind of fell short. I forget to hit the save button and so on and so forth. So I don't really have that many reviews on Goodreads rather than my ratings. And then, of course, it's just all the books I read. And if I go through this list, it will take forever, so we're not going to do that. And then I have another way that I typically track books. It's going to be in my journal, and I'll put the pictures over here as well. I have book series that I completed, and I completed 12 book series, it looks like, last year, and with varying length of how many books were in the series. And then, of course, I have my genre tracker. This isn't perfect. I'm not happy with it by far. I'm going to change it next year slightly because, as you can see, I don't have any romance in it, and I don't really distinguish between horror, mystery, and thriller, which is a problem, but life nothing's perfect. And as you can see from the graph, I absolutely read more fantasy by far than any other genre. Coming in not even a close second, like half list second, is my history, suspense, horror, thriller section, which should be big because I read quite a few of all of those types of novels. And then the next one is going to be nonfiction, which I do tend to read quite a bit. I'm not adding the poetry one next year. They were good, the ones that I did read. All right, now on to the reading survey. And these are just questions that I'm going to answer about my reading year. If you don't mind, I'm going to look at my laptop here, and then of course, I'll put the book over here. I don't necessarily want to take all my books off my shelves. Editing Liz is going to hate this, and I'm sorry, future self, but it's easier right now. So let's get into it. Question 1, the best book you read in 2020. As you can tell from my last video, that was a really hard question, and actually that's the question that convinced me I needed to do a tier ranking because I just couldn't do it. So watch that if you want to know. Sorry. So the next question is book you were excited about and thought you were going to love more, but you didn't. And this is going to be the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. It had all the things I honestly like. It had vampires, which I do enjoy. It was supposed to have strong women and just a fun sci-fi vampire book. However, when I started reading it, it was nothing of the sort to me. I know a lot of people like it, and I really wanted to, but I did not like it at all. I thought the main character, wasn't strong enough until the very end, and all I could do while reading this book is be mad, and not in a good way. So that one. And then most surprising in a good way or bad way book you read. I'm gonna put The Stand here by Stephen King. I went into that book not really knowing what it was about, just that it was Stephen King's longest book, and then I quickly found out it's one of my favorite tropes, which is apocalyptic books. At least in this case, it was the before, during, and after of the apocalypse, which in this form is a disease that kills 99.4% of the population. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. And I have watched the series, not the current series that's airing right now on CBS, but the other series, the first one, also decent. Only 4 episodes, really goes down to 6 hours, but I highly suggest it as well. And then favorite new author you discovered in 2020, and that's going to be Junji Ito, point blank. I've talked about that so much over this whole year. I discovered him this year. I've read a lot of his novels, manga, and I mean, you can even see some of them right here. I just fell in love with his artistry. I fell in love with his horror, and I'm still needing to read 3 more books that are published in English, and then anything else I can get my hands on by him. Highly recommend him. All right, best book from a genre you didn't typically read / was out of your comfort zone. And really, the one that fits this question the most is going to be Beach Read by Emily Henry. I haven't read a romance at that point in a couple months, probably more than half the year, and strict romance. And this book took me by surprise because it is strict romance, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was amazing, point blank. And it honestly is inspiring me to try to pick up more strict romances in the future, for good or for bad. And then the second book that I would put into this category is The Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingslover. Don't think I said her last name right. But looking at it too, I have to admit I read historical fiction quite a bit, but I don't always read contemporary not even contemporary. Well, okay, thinking about this book, I do read a lot of this genre. Ignore all of that. Okay, the most action-packed, thrilling, unputdownable book of the year. Sorry about the noise in the background. Someone's having fun watching YouTube videos, I imagine. Okay, so the most action-packed, thrilling, unputdownable book of the year. I had quite a few of these, actually, but I'm going to go with Stephen Graham Jones's The Only Good Indians. It was so surprising to me, but there was a lot in that book, and I just couldn't put it down because I had to know the story. And what I found out later too is that it was actually written into like 4 short stories and then put together in a book. 4 short stories that go together, obviously. And that makes so much sense because once you finished one part of the book, you're like, wait, what's happening to the other people? And so you have to read on and you have to read on. And it was, read this book. Point blank. If you like horror at all, read The Only Good Indians. And then a book you read in 2020 that would be most likely to reread next year. I've talked briefly about this book, but I ended up buddy reading Mongrels with Amy from A Star Reads. And I'm going to put it above and below again. She's great. Check her out. But this is also a Stephen Graham Jones book. And even with buddy read and having wonderful discussions with Amy, I still can't wrap my head around everything that happened in this book. And I still have so many questions and I just need to reread it in order to, I don't even think I would understand it with a reread, but it might help. I don't know. It was just such an interesting and thought-provoking book. Still with horror, still with werewolves, all that good stuff. But it was, yeah. That's the one that I'm most likely to read next year. Okay, favorite cover of a book you read in 2020. There were so many books that I read and they had so many beautiful covers. I would have to go with Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. It just, especially after you finish the book, you truly understand what the cover is showing you, but at the same time, that cover is just beautiful to me. And oh my gosh. And yes. And then a close runner-up is going, well, I didn't finish it, but I started it, so I'm going to count it on this list. It's going to be Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I honestly, nope, not by me. But it is phenomenal. It's so pretty. It's so almost sparkly or shimmery. And the story does match the cover. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, and I do highly recommend it. It counts even though I finished it like 2 weeks ago or last week. Okay, most beautifully written book in 2020. I'm gonna have to say Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi or Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. I think she is a phenomenal writer, and every time I picked up one of these 2 books, I found myself highlighting or going through and trying to like tab all of these beautiful passages she wrote, and it's just a great story that she can articulate, write. She's a wonderful author, and now I'm going to pick up any book she publishes in the future, point blank. Okay, most thought-provoking / life-changing book of 2020. And I've talked about this book quite a lot. It's a nonfiction book that I fell in love with this past year. So of course it's going to be Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria by Beverly Daniel Tatum. It was absolutely phenomenal, and she articulates her argument so well. Again, articulates or writes. Either way. It was is a wonderful book, and I learned so much from it. And then as a really close runner-up, I would say Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. And this book was also phenomenal. It really has you questioning, or at least it had me as a white woman questioning, what truly is feminism, and does feminism currently or in the past support all females and not just the white middle class female. Very thought-provoking. Good read. Do it. Even if you're not a feminist female. Even if you're not a female. Okay, favorite book you read in 2020 from an author you've read previously. Again, I've talked about this book a lot. It's beautiful, amazing, phenomenal, highly recommended from me. The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Daisy Jones and the Six by her, and I went into this book not knowing it was by the same author, and pleasantly surprised. Currently reading another book by her, and I think I'm gonna love it as well. So best book you read in 2020 that you read based solely on a recommendation from somebody else, peer pressure, Bookstagram, etc. This one is going to be The Silence of the Bones, or Silence of Bones by June and it was recommended to me by Amy from A-Star Reads. She loves this book, and rightfully so. It's a beautiful mystery set in historical South Korea. And it was a book like I've never read before because it was just so different, and it had great historical facts sprinkled in as you're going through this mystery. I would also recommend it, by the way. And then best world building / most vivid setting you read this year. For this one, I'm gonna have to do Black Sun again by Rebecca Roanhorse. I know I already picked this book, and I know I've read so many good world building books, but as someone who's never read a Rebecca Roanhorse book and someone who absolutely loves fantasy, this book delivered absolutely everything. You learn so much within this first book, and it just has you so excited for whenever the next book is going to come out in the series. So yeah, it's my list. I do what I want. And then a book that put a smile on your face / was the most fun to read. I'm actually gonna have to put the Percy Jackson series, world, what have you. I reread the whole Percy Jackson series this past year, along with all of its prequels and sequels, and Rick Riordan has just a way with writing. You know it's a Rick Riordan book no matter what series or what characters he has. You have quirky things happening, you have funny things happening, and you just have wonderful world building, and honestly just great facts sprinkled in by all the mythology Riordan intertwines in his stories. So yeah, those here, and actually they're right behind me. So all of these books put a smile on my head. Put a smile on my face. Okay, book that made you cry or nearly cry in 2020. And this is going to be The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Again, I've mentioned this book a couple of times, I believe. It's a historical fiction book that's written about a reform school, a boys' reform school. And these boys had so much happen to them because of the adults at that school. And you got to remember, it is a reform school. However, they were not treated humanely whatsoever. And I was crying because of the ending. The ending is also a twist and beautiful and written so well. And then I read the afternote, and I found out that this book for the first time was historically accurate and based off of an actual reform school. And that made me cry as well. And it was just, it's a well-written book with so many good facts and It's beautiful. That's all I can say. It's beautiful. Okay, the hidden gem of the year. Have I said this one yet? Oh. I guess it's not hidden, but I would say The Stand by Stephen King again. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was wonderful. It's not exactly hidden because people really enjoy it, but it's my gem of the year, okay? And then the final question I believe I'm going to answer is the book that made you the most mad, and it doesn't necessarily mean you didn't like it. And in this case, I'm going to say the Dark Tower series. If you were watching my wrap-up videos for most of the year, you could see that I went through the series for a couple months and, oh, it pissed me off. It pissed me off to no end. There were parts that I absolutely loved, there was parts that I absolutely hated, and those hated parts kind of continued on for a couple books, and there was quite a few times where I thought I was going to stop the series. And then of course I continued on until I finally reached the end. And I also know that the end of the Dark Tower series is very disputed on whether or not it's good. However, looking back on it, I had a lot of fun going through the series and reading all of them. It was very interesting to do, and I just really enjoyed my time reading it and figuring out the world and the characters and the fantasy parts of it, the contemporary parts of it, or I guess realistic parts of it. And the ending kind of was the icing on top and made the series for me because it just kind of all came together. And I loved the prequel of this series, which was The Wind Through the Keyhole. And it was beautiful. It's a beautiful series, and I do recommend it if you enjoy fantasy, and especially if you enjoy Stephen King as a writer. It's my take on it. And that is my reading year of 2020. I know I mention a lot of books quite a lot of the time, and most of them are recent reads, and there's a reason for that. Reading 246 books this year was a lot, and I honestly have to say I really hope I don't read that much next year, just because I tend to forget about the earlier books and how much I did enjoy them in favor of more recent reads that are fresher in my mind. And that's just life. However, 2020 was an amazing year, and I loved amazing year for reading. Let's just preface that. And I loved so many books from this year, more than ever before, so that also makes me incredibly happy. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and maybe comment below your favorite reads of 2020. All right? You have a great day, and I will see you next time. High five.